The Planted Runner is sponsored by Liquid IV. Instead of making New Year's resolutions, I like to focus on process goals, the little rituals that soon become habits. One of mine this year is making sure I'm hydrated before, during, and after every run. One of my favorite ways to hydrate is with Liquid IV. My current favorite flavor is pina colada, which also, by the way, makes a great mocktail any time of year. In each packet, you get 8 vitamins and nutrients, 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, and no artificial sweeteners. And it's non-GMO and, of course, vegan. Make Liquid IV your new ritual this year. Just one stick with 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PLANTED at liquidiv.com. In my journey going from finishing a marathon in over 4 hours to completing one in under 3 hours, I never once had a running injury. That's unusual because somewhere around 50 to 80% of runners get injured every year. At one point, I was running 90 miles a week with 2 speed days, which, by the way, ended up being way too much for me, both mentally and physically. But I didn't get injured, even with that kind of volume and intensity. Okay, one time I zoned out on a run and I tripped and I fell, but I never had any overuse or chronic running injuries. Is it just genetics, my plant-based diet, or maybe it was luck? While those things certainly helped, I firmly believe it was my dedication to strength training that protected me from injury. In other words, I built a bomber body for running. Last month, I did a solo coaching episode all about strength training for runners, and today I'm going a step further and introducing you to my strength coach, Ryan McMullen. Welcome to The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and my mission is to help you improve your running, your mindset, and your life with science-backed training and plant-based nutrition. In this conversation, Ryan and I will go over exactly how much and what kind of strength training helps runners best, whether we should lift heavy or light or both, and why and how you should mix up the ratio of strength training to running in different seasons. I also ask Ryan what it's like to train me, and I promise you, I did not edit his answer at all. Ryan has worked with hundreds of clients on nutrition, strength training, and more. He has owned a CrossFit gym in California since 2014, but don't worry, he doesn't make me do CrossFit. He coaches nutrition and strength with MetPro and helps clients navigate their goals from weight loss, body composition changes, training programs, and increasing performance across a wide range of different sports, which includes running. Now, a little warning, Ryan and I have a few differing opinions on certain aspects of training for endurance runners, which you will hear. But that's actually pretty great because, you know what, there are a lot of ways to build muscle, and my preferred way just might not be the most effective for you. And now here's my conversation with my strength coach, Ryan McMullen. Welcome to The Planted Runner, Ryan.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
I am delighted to have you. So we are going to talk all about strength training, specifically strength training for runners, because you are my strength coach. So not everybody knows that the coach has a coach, and you're mine. So first of all, let's start with the basics. Why is strength training so critical for runners?
A variety of reasons. So I think the main takeaway is to realize that muscular structure supports the skeletal structure, not the opposite way around, right? So when we strengthen muscle tissue, it's going to support that ground and pound of running. You know, there's so much jolting and force production that's going to happen when you're in a trot or a run or a jog, and you want as much lean mass to support the joints as humanly possible. So the more you strength train, the stronger your legs are going to be, and you're really just keeping your body safe and free of injury and any, future joint issues that you may have.
Well, a lot of runners kind of argue about strength training. First of all, most of them don't like it. They'd rather go out for a run than go to the gym. But the other fear people have is, I don't want to get these big, bulky muscles because that will negatively impact my running. What do you say to both of those?
My first reaction to that is please try. People don't realize how hard it is to truly gain muscle mass. It's, and depending on your body type, it could be a little bit easier or a little bit harder, but to really gain a massive amount of muscle, so I have clients that I work with that we're fighting to put 3-4 pounds of muscle on them in 4, 5, 6 months.
Like me, yours truly.
Like you. Yes. And it's really, really difficult. So when I find people stray away from it for that reason, I just lean into science and say, look, it's really difficult to gain lean mass. It comes from diet. It comes from a lot of strength training. Like you need to be doing 5-6 days a week of pure strength training in order to gain an excessive amount of lean mass, right? So that's kind of my first reaction is please try. The second is, there's a difference in body weight and what you're carrying around versus the output. So especially runners that I've worked with worry about their weight, right? We don't want to be carrying extra weight for a run. We think, hey, 5 pounds heavier means that much more that I'm carrying through a half marathon or a full marathon or my ultra runners. And the difference there is if we put 5 pounds of muscle on you, yes, you are running a little bit heavier, but it's something that's going to benefit you, right? If it's coming from your legs or your upper body, that lean muscle is going to only help your strength and your endurance for running.
Yeah. So true. So speaking of the upper body, I think there's kind of a disconnect sometimes with runners. So there are people who think, okay, I'm a runner. I build muscle running. My leg muscles get built by running. So I don't need to do leg stuff in the gym. And then there's the other people who say, well, I really need to work on my legs to get better at running. So I don't need to do arm stuff in the gym. What do you say to that?
I would actually probably agree more with not doing quite as much upper body. The primary muscles that you're using for running are, your calves, your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, your hip flexors. So I would definitely say I lean a lot more towards people strength training their legs. However, you want to be well-rounded. It's good to work everything, especially, getting away from running, like just talking about the muscles in your upper body. Most of our lives now are sedentary. They're on phones, computers. And I find a lot of times when people aren't strength training their upper body, the shoulders start rounding forward and they kind of lose their posture and their spine. And that can be a problem. So it's just as important for health and longevity that you are strength training your upper body just as much as lower. But as far as benefiting your running, yes, strength training your legs is going to give you a lot more benefit in the long run.
Mm-hmm. So how much is good enough, or what's the minimum effective dose? Again, runners are allergic to the gym for the most part. So what is the least amount that we can do?
Least amount, I would say, is 2 days a week. And that I really want to emphasize that is good enough. I don't feel like it's optimal.
Okay.
So, 2 days a week, and that could be 2 days a week of a full body or a 2-day split where you're working lower half one day and upper the next, and, kind of circling in some core work and some stretching on both days. But really 3 or 4 days a week is more optimal depending on your running program, right? Then you get into timing and that becomes an issue. If your running program's 4 days a week, then, 3 days might not be manageable. But getting in, 2 days a week at minimum, that's what I would say. And then anything more than that is more optimal.
Yeah. So typically what I assign to my marathoners especially, but half marathoners too, is I have them strength training on their hardest running days. So after they get back from the track, after they get back from their long run, they're in the gym for a half an hour at least, or at home working on tired muscles. What I've found is that really makes them durable when it's time for a long race. And I've also found that after a long run, runners are type A personalities for the most part. And so they tend to go hard on the run and they tend to go hard in the gym. And after a long run, you can't go hard in the gym. So what do you say about that philosophy?
I like it from a mindset perspective. From a metabolic pathway perspective, I would actually suggest the opposite for a few reasons. So metabolic pathways when it comes to strength training versus, let's say, long running in particular, right? Not sprints, but long runs. So strength training is anaerobic without oxygen. It's a completely different energy requirement. It's only glucose, right? So you're going to use glucose and stored glucose, glycogen in particular, and you need that. The opposite, that aerobic activity, long runs, it kind of has this neat ability to use both, which is why most runners fuel with gels or chews, right? Something carbohydrate based, because running can both use glucose, but it can also be a fat burning activity. So once in a run, you burn through that stored glucose, you're going to transfer it into burning fat as an energy source primarily. So when you're looking at someone that does a long run and then they go immediately into the gym after, they've burned through all of their stored glucose, everything that they have, and then they go into the gym and try to strength train, and they don't have the necessary energy source to do the strength training. So that could lead their strength work to be suboptimal in terms of what they could potentially output. I would really recommend the opposite. Yeah. And for this reason alone, if they strength train first, and they are going into their run tired, the day race day comes where they're not strength training before, they're going to feel like $1 million.
Yeah. Well, I do it a little differently. So I have, before a tough long run, I have my marathoners run a steady state medium run the day before. So that accomplishes the pre-fatigue. And then, yes, they need to fuel during a long run and they need to fuel after their long run before they strength train. So hopefully they're leaving a little bit of time. But the other goal is to concentrate their hard days so that when they are resting, they truly are recovering. Because I find like what a lot of people do simply because of their busy lives is they'll run a long run on Sunday and then they'll strength train on Monday and then they'll try to go to the track on Tuesday. And then maybe they'll have an easy run on Wednesday and then they'll do their tempo run on Thursday. And it's like, whoa. We're never relaxing. We're never building what we've just, destroyed.
Holy central nervous system attack. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and that is definitely an area that I want to get into. So you have talked to me in our coaching sessions about the central nervous system and central nervous system fatigue. Can you explain what is going on there and why training so much can be an issue?
Yeah, it's... For many reasons. I talk to my clients a lot about cortisol levels. It doesn't matter, strength training, running, all exercise is a stress. And we need to look at it as a stress. It's a good stress, but it is a stress on the body. So there's always going to be a spike in cortisol levels. And when you're not adequately giving your body that time to decrease cortisol, you're just putting yourself in major stress mode. So body kind of goes into fight or flight mode. Your central nervous system starts overworking and then your sleep starts lacking. I mean, so many things start happening, including muscle breakdown, because the body is trying to give its resources to the most critical areas. And that is not lean muscle. It is your essential organs. It's just all about stress. So when you're not giving your body that time to rest, you're just doing yourself a disservice. You're walking backwards instead of walking forwards.
And you mean you need rest obviously during the week, but you mean periods of rest too. So, let's say you have a 5K training cycle for 6 weeks. I see a lot of runners that'll just do those back to back or run marathons back to back. As soon as they've barely recovered from a marathon, they've signed up for the next one and they're already training again. So, what's the kind of long-term effect of this?
Long-term is going to be adrenal fatigue, again, elevated cortisol levels that just aren't dropping. That can lead to weight retention or even weight gain, metabolic distress if you're not eating enough, which is another big thing that I talk to my clients about is, when you're burning so many calories and you're not fueling that enough, your metabolism is going to slow down to acclimate for that. So, I could go on and list the reasons, but, and it's painful for me as an athlete as well. I Olympic lift and, leading up into a competition, my week leading up feels like, man, am I doing enough? Like I'm doing practically nothing here. And then day after or week after maxing out, I have to remind myself constantly, like, give your body that break. You just put yourself through the utmost, like the max that you could possibly do. And that's a lot of attack on stress and central nervous system. And you have to give that rest. So it's funny because for me on, competition days, it's like week leading up, I'm practically doing nothing. Right. And week after, I'm practically doing nothing. And then I have to make sure that, I wouldn't recommend anyone do a marathon at least, if you do one, your next one should at least not be for 12 weeks out. Yeah. Maybe a little bit sooner, but maybe, but you're really pushing it at that point. I mean, that's 4 marathons a year. That's a lot. That's a lot on the body.
Yeah. I only recommend 2 for people. I mean, if you're really wanting to max out performance, 2 is really the most people can handle, occasionally 3, but it's not even just that you're tired and recovering and it's from a performance perspective. You don't have enough time to build up again. Yes, you might be recovered in 3 months, but are you any better than you were 3 months ago? Not really, not likely. Yeah. So let's talk about specifics when it comes to the kinds of strength training that we need to do. So a big, I don't know if it's a debate, but a big thing that people ask about is heavy weights or light weights. So what should we be doing and why?
You're going to hate my answer because it's going to be pretty broad.
It's okay.
You've heard me say this before, but it depends. It depends on your body type, first off. I would start with that. We kind of categorize people ectomorphs, mesomorphs, and endomorphs. And all of those different body types are going to respond differently to exercise. Now, I would say as a general rule of thumb, marathon runners should primarily be doing lighter weights and higher reps. That is going to promote a lot more lean mass rather than, and I use the word mass a little reserved because it's not going to build these big bulky muscles. It's going to keep you lean but strong, and again supporting that skeletal structure. When you're lifting really heavy weights and low reps, you're building strength, but it's not going to promote that consistency of running. So light weights and very high reps is typically what I'm going to recommend for runners.
Oh, but as far as efficiency, though, if you're doing light weights, you got to do a lot of reps to get to fatigue or close to fatigue. So, we want to be out running for 2 hours. We don't want to spend any more time in the gym. So is there a way that we can kind of meet in the middle, and do something in between that?
Yeah. And I shouldn't say a lot of reps. Like, I don't want people thinking like 50, 60, 100 reps. Like, that's not what you need. When we say heavyweight light rep, that categorization really is heavy relative to the individual. And it's typically less than 6 to 8 reps. So less than. We're talking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reps at a time.
Okay.
Lightweight and high rep is around the 8 to 12 or 8 to 15 range at the most.
Okay.
So
I'm glad you explained that, because people think that they pick up the 5-pound dumbbell and they do 100 reps. That's lightweight, high reps. No. Okay. No. Good.
Just the opposite. Yeah. If you're going to do like just a basic bicep curl, my rule of thumb is pick up a weight and find out where you're going to get to 12, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that range, but be failing. I mean, truly, truly be failing at that weight, and then put it down, give yourself that rest. And then the next set, if it's a little bit less at the same weight, great. I want you to be failing between that kind of 8 to 15 rep range. You don't need to pick up that super light dumbbell and sit there for an hour doing, 100, 200 bicep curls.
I don't know about you, but those heavy, ugly plastic jugs of laundry detergent make no sense to me. You're paying for mostly water, they take up a ton of room in your laundry room, and then you toss the huge plastic jug in the recycling. And did you know that 500 million of those bottles end up in landfills and oceans every single year? That's why I made the switch to Earth Breeze laundry sheets. They come in plastic-free packaging, take up almost no space, and you're not wasting your money paying for watery detergent. It's an easy way to get clean clothes without all that plastic waste. Get 40% off with your subscription at earthbreeze.com/plantedrunner. That's earthbreeze.com/plantedrunner. I'm glad you brought up the concept of failure, because I think people disagree on that too. So some people say, okay, the only way to build muscle is to get to failure being defined as, when you can't lift it with good form anymore, right? And other people say, yeah, that's actually a step too far. You shouldn't quite go to failure because that last rep is never going to be with good form. What do you say with that?
I say to go to a step or two below failure. Just get close. Get close to that point. I want to fail in the gym once a month, maybe twice.
Okay.
It's not, you never really want to push yourself to that true failure point, unless of course you're doing something like bodybuilding. Then you need to be pushing to failure on most, if not all of your sets. But for general health, strength training, especially for runners, it's find that rep that you are going to fail and then notch it back 1 or 2 reps. Get close, touch it, get close, but don't quite get there.
What are some of your favorite exercises that help runners the most?
Unilateral exercises. I cannot stress this enough. I'm constantly asking my runners to take any movement that you are going to do bilaterally, like, a double bicep curl, a squat, a deadlift, and make it single side. There's so many in all sports. This goes across all sports, but there's so many bilateral things that we do, both sides, and you don't realize how much more force production is going into one leg versus another. And that can really affect your running in a big way. You may have a stronger push off of your right side and your left side is lacking. And that's going to lead to a loss of force production. It's going to lead to a decreased pace. It's going to lead to eventual injury at some point because the body starts compensating. So in the gym, if you take any strength training exercise that you do and make it unilateral, one side at a time, or working with 2 separate weights, right? Runners, I don't really want them working with a barbell. I want them working with dumbbells. I want them not squatting. I want them doing something like a Bulgarian split squat or a pistol squat or an assisted pistol squat with a TRX band, a deadlift to a single leg deadlift. Anything that I can do to get them to work one side at a time is going to benefit them the most.
Yeah. And it's a sneaky way to get in your core work without sit-ups, right?
A lot. Yeah. Anytime you are loaded on one side or the other, I mean, you can take a simple bench press, right? Rather than going from a barbell, do one dumbbell at a time. And every time you're coming down, that core is fighting you from twisting. And that goes from your legs, it goes to your upper body. Anytime you can get one side at a time, you're doing core work, you're doing pretty much everything.
Okay. So does that mean we can skip specific core work if we are doing unilateral training?
I never really recommend skipping core. It's probably the most important thing. It supports your lower back in particular. It's literally the support structure for your entire body for the most part. So core is not something I would skip. And talking about planes as well, when you do core for runners, everything is in this frontal and like very, very anterior plane. So for runners doing a lot of, if you're going to do core work, doing a lot of side planks or a lot of like Russian twists or, anything that's going to have you working this transverse or side to side motion is going to be most beneficial for runners.
Yeah. I did a post a few months ago about the Russian twist and how great it was for runners. And I actually got a lot of pushback from certain people. They're like, no, that's the worst exercise in the world. That's so bad for your back. That's terrible. So what do you say? What do you say to the Russian twist haters out there?
Well, it can be bad, but for who, right? Who are they talking about? For runners, I widely disagree with that. We want to work as much, any sport, I look at contrast. What does the sport have, like, what are you primarily using in that sport? We have to do the polar opposite when we're in the gym and doing the strength training because it's going to support, again, muscle tissue in planes that you're not working on that day-to-day basis, right? Like that exercise that gave you that tibialis raise.
Oh, yes. Tell people about that one.
Yeah. So, runners like that. So the tibialis, it's the front of the shin muscle. So wherever your shin is, if you follow it directly to the side of it, you have this big muscle on the front of your shin, and it's the primary muscle for deceleration. So this comes from walking downhill or every time you take that step running, that's the primary muscle for deceleration, and it's not working at all when you're running. So I gave you this exercise. Hey, we need to strengthen that muscle. It's going to support the ankle. It's going to support the knee. And it's going to make sure that when you are slowing down, speeding up, walking or running downhill for some marathons, that you're going to have that strength in that muscle to support you going downhill. So
yeah, it's sneaky. It's sneakily hard. Sneakily, is that a word? It's deceptively difficult. Can you explain how you do it?
Yeah. So you're essentially against a wall. You're standing. You walk your feet away from the wall a little bit, and your feet are together. You lock your knees out, your butt is up against the wall, and you literally just lift your toes off of the ground and the balls of your foot. So you're kind of lifting your toes up towards your body, and you come up onto your heels. Your legs are locked out, and it works that front shin muscle. And as you experienced, it's really, really hard when you're closer to the wall. So when you try it, you can, start with your feet out quite a bit. Legs are still locked out, butt is against the wall. And then if it's not that difficult, you can kind of walk your feet closer to the wall and then retry.
Okay, now that you're explaining it, I was doing it wrong. I was doing it more into a wall sit, and I'm just like, this is really hard. Like, so I was sort of, okay, now I know how to do it. Do it properly. I'll try it again.
And watch a video. I mean, they're everywhere. Yeah. It's called the tibialis raise. You can find a ton of them on YouTube. Actually, the wall sit, the version you were doing was extremely difficult.
Yes, I was like, wow, this is really hard. I had to do one leg at a time. I'm just like, this is super hard. I had no idea.
You were still working that muscle quite a bit, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And the quads and everything else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's some people who like to kind of sneak in their strength training. They don't want to go to the gym for a half an hour or an hour. They want to do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe after their run every day, or maybe as part of their warm up. Do you think that is still effective if you break up the strength training throughout the week into little chunks, or does it have to be these concentrated sessions?
I think if they're less time but more frequent, I'm okay with that, right? And especially if you're spending, if you're only spending 10 or 15 minutes, but you're hyper concentrated on 1 or 2 muscle groups, but you're doing that more frequently, 5-6 days a week. Like if you're doing that as part of your warm up before you go on a run and you're hyper focused on just quads and hamstrings, I'm going to do this for 10 minutes, or I'm going to do, chest and biceps, right? Whatever kind of 2, maybe 3 muscle groups that you're working, I'm okay with that. The less the frequency becomes, the more that seems troublesome. So if you're only doing 10, 15 minutes twice a week, I don't really feel like that's enough to contrast all of the repetitive motion of running that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be fair, like everything that we're talking about today is on a sliding scale. Like if you're a brand new beginner and you've never done any of this stuff before, 10 minutes could be a really serious workout for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite things to say to clients is intensity is only relative to the individual. Right.
Yeah.
And that goes across the board. I strength train. I do Olympic lifting. And so for me to go run 2 miles is pretty tough. That feels intense to me. So for me, and that for a runner might be like, that's a great warm up for the next 18 miles that I'm going to do. But that's relative to me. Whereas, if you flip it around, someone that runs, 20 miles plus, and they're doing that fairly consistently, getting them into the gym and doing a 2-hour strength session like I might do is asking a lot. So it definitely a sliding scale, right? What is intense to you? Start there. And just like running, build from it. You don't want to stay there. Start with your 10 or 15 minutes, focus on a couple muscle groups, but make sure that you're progressively building just like you would through a marathon program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's good that you brought up the word focus, because you read a lot about, well, I do, about exercise and what's the best way to do it. And a phrase that comes up a lot is mind in muscle. Have you heard that? Mind and muscle. So really think about what you're doing. So if you're doing a biceps curl, put your mind in the muscle and really think about, pulling it up versus phoning it in. Yeah. Do you find that it makes a difference?
Gosh, you know what? I haven't heard that before. That's a new one for me. Yeah. But I guess that's what I do when I'm strength training. So I guess, yes, you should be, just like anything, when you're doing anything, if you want to execute it properly, you should be hyper focused on what you're doing. And I think when you go in with intention to do it correctly with good form, you are putting your mind in the muscle in that sense. Whether you're doing a bicep curl or a squat or a lunge, if you're focusing on the movement pattern alone, you're putting your mind to that muscle. So I would just really encourage people, make sure your form is locked in. You're never pushing yourself to extreme fatigue where your form breaks down. We never want that. And if you're focused on your form, then your mind is in the muscle.
Good. Yeah, I like that. How can people get into the habit of strength training? A lot of runners have the really strong running habit for the most part, obsessed with running. Well, I have to pull them back from too much running. But the strength training, they're just like, I don't know about this stuff. And they skip it. They come up with reasons to skip it, or we have busy lives, so any tips for getting into the habit?
Yes. First, reflect and understand that things that are good for you are not necessarily the things that you want to do, right? There's a big difference between discipline and motivation. And again, I am the same way, but probably in the opposite format. I love strength training. If you hand me a barbell, dumbbells, a bench, I'm a happy camper. I could be set with that. But I know for lung health, cardiovascular health, body weight, I need to be doing cardio. I hate it. I'm not a fan. Please, I've done the running before and I don't super enjoy it anymore, but I know I need to be doing it. So I treat it like brushing my teeth or taking a shower. It's just something that you need to do for your overall health. And if you look at it as a discipline factor, then you're much more likely to do it and put it on the calendar, right? Just like your running program, it needs to be in your calendar, part of the program. Don't say no. And I would even say if you're skipping that, then you should probably also be skipping a run or two here and there, regardless of your program.
Yeah.
And I put that constraint on my clients a lot. Hey, if I hear that you want to run 5 days a week, but if you're not running or if you're not strength training 3 days a week, then, we need to pull out a run because it's imbalanced and we're not getting where we want to be.
Yes, that's so funny that you just brought that up because I just got off the phone with a client the other day who was like, I want to bump up to 6 days a week. And I'm like, but are you doing your strength training? He's like, not as consistently. I'm like, let's wait to get that strength training nailed. Then we'll talk about the extra day of running.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to just chat about off season versus in season strength training. So obviously when we are training for some running event, our main focus is going to be running and strength training is supplemental. But in the off season, we can kind of switch things around. What would you recommend that people do if they're doing, let's say, 2 marathons a year?
Yeah. Off season, I would say to just completely flip your number of days running versus strength training. So if your running program calls for 4 days a week of running and you're doing 2 days a week of strength training, during the off season, take that opportunity to flip it the other way around. Now we're doing 4 days a week of strength training and 2 days a week of running. And I know for runners, because I've coached so many of them, that's hard because
what about our endurance? We don't want to lose our endurance.
There's such a fear behind it. And the thing is, you won't lose that. If you're still doing it 2 days a week, if you go from, 4 days a week to no days a week, yes, you're going to lose some. Absolutely. If you don't use it, you lose it. So, but 2 days a week is more than enough to maintain your endurance. And I would even say if you're really worried about it, just take it from running to some other form of cardiovascular exercise. There's so many benefits for runners to getting on a bike, going swimming, right? There are tons of other, hop on a rower, do something different that's going to do the same thing, tax your cardiovascular system, but completely different than what you're used to. And that's only going to support your running. I can't tell you how many clients I have that, hey, injury spikes, they can't run. They're terrified. I'm going to lose all of my endurance. And I'm like, we're going to get you in the pool.
Right.
They get in the pool, they swim 3-4 days a week, and they get back to running once their injury has kind of subsided or we've worked it out. And they're like, I lost nothing. I feel fine.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So should we make our strength training sessions aerobic? A lot of runners, we don't want to take those rest periods. I'm guilty. I don't want to do, 2 minutes of lifting and 2 minutes of standing around looking at my phone. I don't want to do that.
As I've learned.
So should we truly try to make our strength sessions anaerobic? Is that the goal or what's going on there?
You don't need to. If the goal is truly to build lean mass, if you really want to I want to put on 3 pounds of muscle or 4 pounds of muscle, then absolutely. Your strength training should be anaerobic. It's anaerobic by nature. If you are strength training to support your running and your general health, you don't need to. Thank you. The biggest fan, the biggest fan of it has to be something you enjoy doing. So take strength training as a whole and then sneak your way in and find out, how do I make this enjoyable for me? So if that means you're doing 30 on, 30 off for your entire strength training session, as long as it's happening, that's better. It's way better than taking a program where it's like, do, a set of 8 and then sit there for 2 minutes and rest. If you're going to be bored of that and then not do it, then it's not happening at all. So you find strength training as a whole, find the way that you like to do it, and whatever that way is, that's going to support you the best you can, because it's going to be more frequent.
Absolutely. There's a lot of ways to build muscle, right?
Yep.
Like, we don't have to do it just one way, right?
You know what? Strength training unless you're a power lifter or, trying to deadlift an absolute max or an Olympic lifter, strength training is relatively simple. If you are doing it consistently, frequently, and being mindful about it, you're going to see the benefits.
Yeah. Well, I think that is kind of a perfect place to wrap it up. But I first have to ask you, and you can say whatever you want and be totally honest. What's it like to train me?
I won't be cheesy. It's been a pleasure. Everything that we just talked about in terms of, because with you, it's been fun, hey, try this program. And you're like, okay. And you really like it for 2 weeks. And then you're like, oh. And then it's like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's recreate this. Let's start from the basics. So for me as a strength coach, that's fun. I really like that, and I encourage any of your runners, anyone listening, find a coach that's willing to ask that question. Are you enjoying it? Because if you're not, it needs to be tweaked. And so it's been a pleasure, and that's been my experience with you.
Yay. Well, you've put a lot of muscle on me, that is for sure. And I'm a skinny little runner, so I'm very happy too. So Ryan, where can people connect with you? And if they want to work with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can, a couple ways, contact me directly, ryan@metpro.co. There's also going to be a link that I'll send you to put in the podcast. They can click on and get a free consultation. So if they click on that and come through the Planted Runner, we can give them a free consultation, just talk with them about what we do through MetPro in terms of strength training, running programs, and especially nutrition. That's what we specialize in. So if they're looking for a strength coach or anything, they can use that link and do a consultation and get to know us a little bit more.
Well, Brian, this has been an absolute treat. We usually talk on the phone. We don't see each other's faces very often. So it is an absolute pleasure to see you and work with you. And you've definitely made a difference in my fitness. And so highly recommend 10 stars for you. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thanks, Claire. I had a blast.
If you'd like to find out more about how to work with Ryan, head to our show notes for the link to get a free consultation. And now it's time for the Mental Strength Minute. Fortify your mind in 60 seconds or less. Today's topic is what I call shadow runs. Based on a concept made famous by psychoanalyst Carl Jung, your shadow self is everything you don't like about yourself. Shadow runs are those workouts or races that don't go well. Maybe you didn't hit your paces in your track workout, or you started completely falling apart at mile 4 of your goal half marathon. Shadow runs have the potential to haunt you and could even limit your ability to keep on trying. The reality is that we all have shadow runs and we can't escape them. The stronger your light, the darker your shadow, which can mean that the more important running becomes to you, the more the shadow runs sting. Our only choice is to accept that they are part of the running experience and try to learn what we can from them. The more we fear those shadow runs, the more power we give them, and the harder it is to find the light. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can win free access to one of my Sprint Session masterclasses just for writing an Apple Podcast review. So be sure to write yours right after your run today. Reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next because I read every single one. Have a great run today.
There is no hood like parenthood. When you meet a fellow parent, you just kind of get each other on a whole nother level. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of 3, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. I interview changemakers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, aka their mom sense and dad sense. I've had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton. It's me, Bobby Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
Episodes release every Thursday. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Join my tribe at thatstotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you.